All right, guys, the rest round episode, I believe this is episode, 3 now, officially. Today we've got Colt Yinger here. He's an Ohio University wrestler. A little bit backstory on Colt. He was a 4-year letterer over at Nelsonville York High School, won state, now wrestles at Ohio University. Got a lot we want to talk about. He's got an internship coming up. But Colt, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me. No problem. Excited to be here.
I wanted to kind of start off talking about as far as high school, just kind of your high school career, your high points, what you really like, because I know your dad was your coach. What you really liked about that, whether or not having family kind of help out, if that made you a better wrestler or a better athlete, because you had other sports that you played too. You was also a linebacker in high school.
Yep. So honestly, I was a 3-sport athlete pretty much from first grade on to 8th grade. I was a 3-sport athlete. It was football in the fall, wrestling from about November until late March, April. From there, we would go right into baseball. I would play baseball.
Yeah, I'll take care of that. Sorry, Colt. I mean,
you're good.
He's getting crazy over there.
So we were playing I was playing rec league baseball from, I don't know, April, May, June, all the way to late July. And then I would play travel ball. So I was a 3-sport athlete up until the 8th grade. And then once I hit middle school, I really started wanting to reach out to the big events. And so Super 32 was one I really remember, because every year in middle school, I was like, hey, I want to go to Super 32. It's the best tournament in the country. But it fell during football season. And so I remember I would start cutting weight during football season, and I would be the week of a football game cutting weight for a big wrestling event on that weekend. So, excuse me, going into high school, I was kind of I realized that this is something I might have to stop doing if I really want to succeed and excel in wrestling. I'm going to have to get out there to these events. These are the biggest events of the year. They happen at this time. It's kind of unfortunate, but it's what's got to happen. So as a freshman in high school, I didn't play football. I wrestled. I actually joined the golf team during the fall because they were a little more lenient with my schedule, and never golfed before. I thought it was fun. So it worked out well with my wrestling schedule. I was training a lot, wrestling, playing some golf. And then made it to state tournament as a freshman and lost in the match to place. I had won in the first round, made it to quarterfinals, and then got pinned in the quarterfinals and to a match that was 2-2 in the second period, got pinned. And then in the match to place my freshman year, I was wrestling a senior. I was winning 5-0 right off the start. And within 10 seconds, I was on my back after he had been on his back, and he pinned me. So that was my freshman year, basically. I went to NHSCA's National High School Coaches Association Nationals, finished 4th out there. So I had a solid freshman year, but it wasn't anything crazy. But I put myself on a level with everybody else where I knew I had an opportunity to keep growing. And me and my dad's relationship was probably the rockiest my freshman year out of any year, just because I think he started to feel a little bit of pressure. Everybody's seen this kid running around the gym for 15 years now, and now he's here. Where's he going to end up? And Dakota Mays was a senior at the time. He was like an older brother to me. So me and him bickered and argued all the time. And it was a little bit of a rockier freshman year, I think, but we made it work and we enjoyed it. Sophomore year, I decided to play football again. Don't know what made me decide to play, but decided to play football again. Played football. Had a fun year. Wrestled, and I finished 3rd in the state tournament that year, my freshman year. I really had a pretty good postseason compared to where I was probably supposed to end. There was a 2-time state champion in that bracket. There was a returning state finalist. There was a returning 3rd from Division II in that bracket who I wrestled earlier in the year. So I was kind of the long shot, but I had a pretty solid state tournament that year. I would say I didn't leave too unhappy. I beat a state finalist for 3rd and 4th as a sophomore in high school. And I would say that was probably one of the turning points in my career. I was like, all right, now we're going to hit the ground running, and it's time to jump levels. Cause I always say there's levels to this game, wrestling. And I'm sure it's the same way with jiu-jitsu. There's levels to this stuff. I mean, people were on your level or they're not. And that's kind of where I went. Now I've got to start, I'm on that level, but now I've got to jump above that level. And so I finished 4th at the National High School Coaches Association Nationals that year as well in the sophomore division. I forget what years I went to Fargo. I went to Fargo as like a freshman, lost in the match to place, which is probably your biggest national tournament of the year. Lost the match to place that year, or the match before the match to place actually. And then I actually had a broken bone my sophomore year. Broke my wrist at a tournament, so I couldn't wrestle much in the summer. And then junior year came around, and I didn't play football again. And there was some things go on that was just like, I was starting the recruiting process. I was still at Nelsonville, York. I started the recruiting process. I had visited Campbell University in North Carolina and Buies Creek. I had visited Gardner Webb and Boiling Springs, North Carolina. So I was starting to visit some schools. I'd been visited Central Michigan. I'd been in contact with Kent State, OU. So I was really starting to figure out where I wanted to wrestle in college, and I was starting to really make some progress. And things just didn't go the best at Nelsonville. And so in the middle of that year, it's probably late fall, I decided I wanted to go to live in Mechanicsburg, Ohio, which is 2 hours, like almost west over by Dayton area, right in Springfield, Ohio area. And I lived with 3 other kids that won state titles that year. And I lived with the number 1 kid in the country, Caleb Romero, who is a round of 12 blood round wrestler this year for Ohio State. He'll be an All-American here soon, hopefully. So I lived with him. He was number 1 in the country at the time. And so I was getting to train with these guys every day of the week. And that's where I really started to like jump the levels that I was talking about. I went from being 3rd in the state to I won a pretty big national tournament that year in the fall. I went on and wrestled that year, had a really good season. I had to miss half the season because of transfer rules. And then in the state finals, I wrestled a freshman actually, and probably wrestled my worst match of the year and just got beat that night. We were in a bracket together earlier in the year. That kid finished 5th and I'd finished 2nd. So that was kind of a little setback, but the recruiting process was still going on. I actually committed to Ohio University in the middle of that year. Coach Greenlee's the head coach here at OU. I've probably known that guy since I was 4 or 5 years old. Just grew up watching the Bobcats, was a big Bobcat fan. So decided to come to OU, went back home for my senior year of high school, played football. I was our starting fullback and middle linebacker. I was honorable mention All-State at linebacker. Our team went to the Final Four, and I would say that's probably one of my top high school memories was going to the Final Four with that team, because at the beginning of the year, I think a lot of people had us going like 5-5, and we ended up 13-1 in the Final Four, and nobody ever projected that. And that was kind of fun because it was a challenge I hadn't really dealt with, in a sense of like the whole team was doing something together, and I was just a little tiny part of that. And so my part had to be a lot bigger than I even knew, because that little tiny part was a big part in the grand scheme of things. So that was a lot of fun. I got to be back with a lot of my friends from Nelsonville and really just enjoy being back home. And then senior year, we knew it was time to get to work, and we really made some big changes and got a lot better again. And kind of ran through the state tournament that year. I think I beat my first round opponent like 20-8. Second round was a pen. Semifinals, it was like 15-5 or 6. And then in the state finals, I had wrestled that kid the week before, beating by 8 points the week before. And I think I beat him by 5 in the state finals. So that was kind of like a really nice way to put a cap on my senior year at Nelsonville. And then decided to go to Flow Nationals, which is like one of the bigger national tournaments throughout the year, and went to Flow Nationals, and I was the number 1 seed there and had won that national title, which was a pretty big deal, honestly, going into college. It was kind of like, that's one of the bigger tournaments out there. That's a good way to put it into my senior year, cap things off the right way, and then just got into college and started right away, honestly.
Let me ask you a question real quick. When you say you went and lived with some people in Mechanicsville, like how does that work? Because you guys are in high school.
Yeah. So my parents weren't I say my parents. My dad wasn't a very big fan of that. I think he's watching right now. Shout out to him. But so I was right in the middle of the recruiting process, and things kind of just fell through at Nelsonville. There were some circumstances that weren't the best for me at the time. And I was actually on a visit to Campbell and then Gardner Webb in the same weekend. So I was going to 2 visits in one weekend. I was going to the one school for like a Friday, Saturday, and then the other school for the Saturday, Sunday. And I was working out at the other school, like a prospect camp, and just hadn't been happy for a little while. And I knew that I wasn't going to be my best. And if I wasn't in a good environment where I was happy and succeeding in the classroom and or in the wrestling room, So on that trip, I kind of took it upon myself to decide that I was going to go somewhere else. My parents weren't the happiest about it. I took it upon myself and decided all on my own. I said, I'm transferring. And my dad looked at me and was like, no, you're not. And so I was on my phone, and my grandparents live in Bellefontaine, Ohio, which is Indian Lake, Bellefontaine area. So it's pretty close to Mechanicsburg. And so I kind of looked at their location. I'd said, all right, I'm going to live with grandma and grandpa. Where do I need to go to high school within reasonable distance? And then the other thing that I took into consideration was, where am I going to be the best wrestler I can be, right? So like, that's a pretty good area for wrestling. Let's take advantage of it. I don't want to just go to Bellefontaine High School and be put in a situation that I'm not really familiar with. Let's go somewhere where I'm pretty familiar with, guys that I already know that are accomplished themselves in wrestling, and let's go live with them. And so I looked, and Mechanicsburg had been, I'd lost to a kid from Mechanicsburg in the state semifinals my junior year, the year I got third. I lost to a kid from Mechanicsburg. And I had knew Caleb Romero, who is a 4-time state champion in Ohio. Tanner Smith was a state champion in Ohio. Alex Ryan, state champion. And so I kind of knew all of them throughout my years of just wrestling on national teams with them. And I knew they had like an opening at my weight class. And I texted them. I said, hey, I'm coming to Mechanicsburg. And my parents were like, no, you're not. And so I got my mom on board pretty quickly, because she's always just been a really big supporter. Happy Mother's Day to her if she's watching. But she's always just been a really big supporter of like, whatever you've got to do to get to where you need to go, whatever's going to make you best. And so she was on board. And I remember we went and saw the school and spent the night at my parents' house with my parents. And we took an orientation at the school and things. And we mapped out the 50-minute drive from my grandparents' house to Mechanicsburg that I was going to be making every day. I was only 16 at the time, or actually just turned 17. And so my dad was kind of like, dude, that drive's a 45-minute drive every single day, both ways. Like, I don't think this is happening. And I was pretty upset. So we left Mechanicsburg. I fell asleep in the car after orientation. And I remember I woke up in Nelson, and my dad said, let the principal know you're transferring. And I went, what? Because I fell asleep, and he was dead set on no, like, you were staying at Nelsonville. And he said, if this is what's going to be the best for you, and this is going to help you and benefit you in the long run, I think your mom and sister might not like me if I don't let you go. So you're going. And man, it was a great experience. I had Caleb, who was like an older brother to me. I mean, dude was strict on me, and I'd always been the older brother in my household. I got a little brother that's 18 months younger than me, who wrestled here at OU with me. And so I was always the big brother, but Caleb was the big brother. And I stayed with my grandparents for probably about 2 months, making the commute back and forth every day. And I would spend the night at Caleb's house once or twice a week just to make it a little bit easier. And then I would say after about a month and a half, 2 months, his family was like, hey, Colt, we've talked. Listen, we don't care if you spend the night here every night. Like, you don't have to go back to your grandparents. Like, we're willing to take you in and let you live here. You know, you pay for your food, you pay for your gas and things, but you've got a bed under our roof, and, you know, you're part of our family. And to the day, I'm best friends with his sister, both of his sisters, him, just all around great people.
So do you think one last question, Gary, and I'm sorry to interrupt, but that's what I was thinking. Do you think while you were sleeping that your dad was putting some serious thought into it on his own, was like, hey man, like, I think this is what my son really wants. And maybe he just had like a heart to heart with himself. You know, what changed there?
Yeah, absolutely. Because when we were on our college visits the weekend before, me and him had a big heart to heart. I mean, it was an 8-hour car drive. We had numerous amounts of those together. It was just me and him this time though. And there were some tears shed, and it was like, man, I don't know if I can let you go. Like, this is a dream that, like, if without my dad, I would have never been where I am today. He started this whole wrestling journey a long time ago. And it was kind of like, man, we always talked about and dreamed about doing this together. So let's do it together. And when I went to sleep, I really thought, like, man, like, how could I blame my dad if he doesn't let me go, though? Like, he's been the head coach here for, at that time, probably 18 years, 19 years. I don't blame him if he doesn't want his son, who's ranked number 1 in the state at the time, to leave schools. I mean, he wanted a state champion. I was ranked number 1 in the state at the time, and he wanted that for Nelsonville. Like, not only himself, but our team. I was best friends with a lot of the guys on the team. My brother was still on the team. So me and my brother were on different teams. And yeah, it was a heart to heart. And I think he really did have to sit there and dig deep and go, man, this is probably really what's best for Colt at the time, honestly.
It's an interesting, as a dad being a coach, and it's a little different with jiu-jitsu. My son's in jiu-jitsu with me and I'm his instructor, but you're a little bit harder on your kids. You can't, I'm sure your dad was harder on you than he was everybody else, expected the most out of you. You had to be the one pushing the pace. If you weren't, even if you weren't pushing your own pace, but you were still the best wrestler on the mat, he would see that you were slacking. He would probably call you for it. I know that I do that with my son. So to be the person who's sort of overseeing that, to let that go is difficult. And so that's, first things first, amazing on him for recognizing when to step back and let you do your thing.
Yeah.
What about having your younger brother wrestle with you all through high school and now in college? Because that was something that I did want to touch on too, is like, obviously you got the brotherly bond that you have, but now you're also brothers in combat. You guys hit the mats every day together. That's a little bit different. How's that go?
Yeah, it's awesome. Honestly, sometimes people are blessed to have a brother and they might unfortunately not be best friends. They might be best acquaintances, or, they were both in the same family, different ages or whatever. Luckily for me, we were only 18 months apart and I was born with a best friend. I mean, he's still my best friend today. He's actually, if you hear any yelling, he's back there playing video games, but still to the day, he's my best friend. So it was awesome. I mean, we grew up and he started wrestling a little later on than I did, but we both just loved it. And I think he was probably my biggest fan growing up. I remember we would be at national tournaments and the NHSCAs I talked about, like that would be a one we would be at, and there would be 150 kids in each of our brackets. And to place top 8 there was a long 3 days. And my brother would go there and he would do well for himself and he would have a solid tournament, but find himself just outside of placing or whatever. And I remember I'd be like, hey man, I'm so proud of you. I thought you wrestled really hard this weekend. You wrestled some really tough kids. I mean, the one weekend he wrestled the #1 kid in the country. And he'd be like, it's all right, man. He's like, hey, I get to coach you now with Dad. And I'd be like, all right, buddy, if that's what you want to do. And like when I won the Flow Nationals, he was in my corner and things. So the year that we moved apart was really hard because I think I wondered about him a lot more than he wondered about me. And we were both really young and immature still at the time. 16, 17 years old is still pretty young. So I would wonder about him a lot and just hope he was doing well. And honestly, I think that was one of his best years he had wrestling, because I think he became the spotlight of the team at that time. He was the highest state placer they had that year. He was, probably the best wrestler on the team at that time. And I was super glad for him to get that spotlight and that glory that he deserved. And I was kind of taken away by that at Mechanicsburg. But then when we were reunited, my senior year, we had a great experience together. I mean, for us to place together at the state tournament 2 different times was really awesome. And then to do it at the same high school the last time was really enjoyable. And then to get to come to college, I didn't think he was going to wrestle in college for the longest time. I think I was on a team trip in Tennessee when I got a phone call in August, right before his freshman year. And he said, hey, I'm going to wrestle. I'm going to live with you in the dorms and we're going to do it together. And I said, all right, let's do it. And so it's been great. I mean, he's still probably my biggest critic. He'll sit in our living room. Hey, you can't eat that today. What do you weigh right now? You got to wrestle this weekend. And then this year he got to wrestle in. It was a dream come true, honestly. It brought some tears to my eyes. We got to wrestle in the same college dual meet together at Virginia Military Institute. And to get to watch him go out and compete and start as a varsity wrestler for his first college meet was at Division I was honestly super impressive to me, and probably the most proud I've ever been of him. And just as a brother, as a friend, everything, just was glad to see that kid succeed the way he had, because he overcame a lot of odds, honestly.
And I don't know how you feel about it. I think it's always harder to watch other people compete than it is to compete myself. I can't, when I'm competing, everything's in my hands. I can control the situation to the best of my ability. If I'm outmatched, I'm outmatched, but it's all on me. There's nothing that I have to worry about. If somebody else is competing, if I'm watching my son or one of my students from jiu-jitsu compete, that I'm a wreck, because I can't control any more variables. All the work has been done and now it's up to them.
I think that's how my dad is too. My dad, you watch him coach, he's kind of moving in the corner and he's very vocal, and he's always wound up. But my brother, I always had a hard time watching him, and it was something I learned to do better with throughout college and later in our high school years, because I realized how much energy it would start to take from me to watch him and be into his matches. So I mean, my senior year at the state tournament, there was times where I couldn't watch him. Like, I think the morning that I wrestled in the state finals, I don't know that I watched him but one time. He wrestled 2 or 3 times that morning, but just to try to keep my heart rate down and my energy level down and not excite myself at 11 o'clock in the morning when I didn't have to do anything until 7 o'clock that night it was a little difficult. But I think he always watched me a little better than I watched him. He always expected me to win, and sometimes he would be a little more of a roller coaster. And then when I would lose, though, I would hear it from him. You were better than that kid. You should have beat him. But that's the best thing about having a little brother, is he's your best friend and biggest critic all in one.
Now, going from high school wrestling, and you won state, and now it's time to go into college. Speaking of going into college with your brother, as you went into college, did you feel that there was definitely like, okay, now we've really stepped up in competition? It's a D1 wrestling school. You had there were some nationally ranked guys that OU when you went in, I believe, wasn't there? I'm pretty sure. So like guys who had a lot of expectations. When you hit that wrestling mat, like, was it, how did it differ from high school going into serious collegiate wrestling?
Yeah, it was definitely a little bit of a change. I don't know that I ever really doubted myself, though. I think the one thing, and I had just had a talk with Coach Greenlee about a month ago now, and he kind of talked about my freshman year. I think the one thing I always did was just, I thought I belonged, and I believed in myself a lot more than I think anybody ever did. I came in, Zach Carson was a national qualifier for Eastern Michigan University, and I had committed to OU expecting to kind of sit behind Austin Reese for a year maybe and redshirt for my freshman year. He had some medical issues, couldn't wrestle. So then next, I was kind of the next man up. We had Joe Terry also in the lineup. He was a state champion for Pickerington Central. And then next, I know Zach Carson's transferring to OU. And I'm like, he just made it to nationals at 165 pounds. That's kind of what I planned on wrestling the next 3 or 4 years. He's only a junior. Like, he's got 2 years left. And I just kind of remember coming into the room like, whatever happens, happens. Like, I'm probably not supposed to be here right now. And I would just wrestle my tail off every day. And I think for the first month or so, Alec Hagan, our 149 pounder, and Zach Carson, who ended up ultimately going down to 157, they could beat on me pretty badly in a single day if they really wanted to, and if things were going their way and not mine. But I just remember it was kind of like wrestling for survival, honestly. Like, I was just, everything I did was for their respect and to try to find my place on the ladder really quickly. I mean, I just wanted to be like, I wanted everybody to think, hey, this kid belongs. He's one of us now. Like, he's the real deal. He'll be here and he's going to make an impact on our program over the next 4 to 5, maybe 6 years, however long he's here. And I mean, I remember one time, my first college injury, Cam Kelly was a 3-time national qualifier for us here at OU. We were racing each other in a workout one day on the track. I mean, the whole team was out there, and I think we were racing for second place. First place was way ahead of us, but to me, it was personal. I got the 2-time national qualifier senior running right beside me. Hey, I'm only a freshman. Like, to me, that's personal to beat him right now. And I sprained my ankle. I was stepping onto some metal pole on the inside. And after practice that day, he kind of tapped me on the butt. He's like, hey, you're only a freshman. You'll get up to me someday. And it just kind of stuck with me a little bit. I was like, man, all right, well, I'm not too far off. And so I think I just really believed in myself. Like, and maybe it was delusional belief, and I was a little bit crazy to believe in myself at times, but I really did. And yeah, I just really thought I belonged, and I knew it was kind of where I wanted to be and had planned to be forever. So I wasn't really that surprised, I guess. I didn't get that shell shock stardom.
I was going to say, I think you proved that you belong that season too. Your freshman year, you had a pretty good season.
Yeah. Yeah, I had a solid regular season. I started off, I had won a freshman sophomore division tournament. So it was only freshman sophomore. And I beat a top 5 kid in the country coming out of high school that I had been longtime friends with in Ohio, beat him at when he was at Purdue So I won a tournament right away. I won a few dual meets, and I started off like 7-0. And I had a great start, and then hit some rocks throughout the road. And I think the epitome of my freshman year was close, but not yet, because I think I wrestled about 5 or 6 nationally ranked guys that I had either lost to by a point or in overtime. And every time I'd lost by a point would have been in the last 10 seconds. There was a few guys. I mean, one was at home my freshman year. I'd wrestled a kid who was ranked 12th in the country from Missouri. I was beating him the whole match and get taken down with 10 seconds left. All right, we're right there, but not yet. Go on later in the year, I wrestled a kid that's ranked like 16th in the country from Virginia. I beat him the whole match, get reversed with 10 seconds left. Man, these are starting to get a little aggravating. I'm getting there, but I'm not there yet. And, last dual meet of the regular season, I was wrestling a kid ranked like 20th in the country from Gardner-Webb, few-time national qualifier, beating him the whole match, takes me down with 4 seconds left. And I was like, all right, I'm getting close now. And I remember I told the kid from Missouri at home while we were on the mat, I tapped him on the butt and I said, I'll beat you at the MAC tournament. I promise you, I'll beat you at the MAC tournament. Didn't know if I would ever beat him at the MAC tournament, but after I had wrestled him, I had felt him and I really knew like this kid's no better than me. Wrestled him at the MAC tournament in the semifinals. I got the 4 seed and roles were reversed. He was winning with 10 seconds left and I get the takedown. So now I just take out the number 12 kid in the country and I'm into the MAC finals as a true freshman. I'm excited. Go out in the MAC finals. I'm winning the whole match. Take the kid down twice. Third period comes around. I think I was winning 5-2. Going into the third period of the MAC tournament. I was a pretty strategic wrestler. I don't really give up 5-2 leads. Wrestled a kid from Buffalo, 2-time MAC champion Troy Keller. He turns me with 10 seconds left, puts me on my back for 4 points. Ultimately, he ends up winning 7-5 or whatever it was. But that was pretty much the quote of my freshman year was close, but not yet. And then it showed at the end of the year. Ultimately, I didn't make the national tournament. The kid from Missouri that I beat in the semis finished 3rd at the MAC tournament. He qualified for the national tournaments, but they didn't send me. The NCAA got to pick their last 6 qualifiers and picked him over me. So that was tough. And then, yeah, it was, but I knew I was starting to get somewhere.
After that, you had a injury and you were out. You got redshirted, right?
Yep. I tore my labrum in my shoulder.
Yeah. And so you were out for a while for that. How was coming back from that, and what all did you have to do as far as like physical therapy, and how long was it before you was really able to get back in and train?
Yeah, I tore it in I think it was September 22nd, because that's one of my best friend Mario Guillen's birthdays. I tore it September 22nd at practice my sophomore year. And I remember I was at practice, I dislocated it. I knew something just wasn't right. Go to the trainer, put it back in place, get some MRI imaging done. Comes back, it's torn labrum. I have a surgery, and they tell me it's going to be about 10 months before I'm healthy, like 100% again. And so I was rehabbing about 3 days a week for a solid 6 months, honestly. Just whatever I had to do. It was like I was lifting 1 pound dumbbells, 2 pound dumbbells, and like I would get 10 reps and my shoulder would be exhausted. It really made me find a new identity in myself outside of wrestling, because for the first time in my life, I couldn't be known as a wrestler on the mat, or I wasn't very relevant at the time wrestling wise. I was sitting on the bench. I mean, I think a lot of people had me at that time ranked top 30 in the country coming back that year. And I was just on the bench. I couldn't do anything about anything. And it was tough. I grew a lot and really tried to figure out who I was outside of wrestling, I think. And it really helped me figure out what I was there to do, and how much do you really love what you're doing, because this is brutal if you're not ready to do it. And then COVID hit right after I was done with my rehab, so that really prolonged things really up until I think I went just about a calendar 12 months without wrestling hard because of COVID and everything. And it really maybe set me back this year. I don't know if I wasn't as mentally prepared this year as I was, or if just a lot of things kind of compiled, and me and my coach talked about it. It was kind of just like a year and a half ran up on us with COVID and everything, and we didn't know it was coming, and it hit us all at once. And it was like, man, that was tough, honestly.
Where do you think, this kind of a little bit off, the career path, but What do you think Ohio ranks in, if you're going to rank states, right? Like obviously we're going to be all of us a little bit biased because we're mostly from Ohio here. But that being said, before we came on camera, you and I were talking, and there's a school called St. Ed's that's routinely ranked,
Yeah.
number one, number two, number three in the nation. Also, is it Walsh Jesuit that's also ranked as well?
Walsh Jesuit used to be really, really highly thought upon and still is. They still have some good wrestlers along with Ignatius as well.
Yeah. So I mean, and that's my background. So I know of them obviously because I am from Cleveland, Ohio. But so and the reason I bring this up is I'm currently living in West Virginia, and we have, we obviously have a fight gym, West Virginia. Have a lot of wrestlers, and they'll bring it up too. So when they come and get outside the state, whether it's Pennsylvania, Ohio, whatever, the level of competition goes up, right? And mostly it doesn't mean that people from Ohio or Pennsylvania are necessarily better. There's more people in those states compared to West Virginia. So I'm
Yeah.
just saying, like, so people from West Virginia don't feel like I'm knocking them. It's there's more people, right?
Right.
So where do you think it ranks higher? Like, do you guys rank yourself up there in Ohio?
Yeah. So I think I'm actually, I would say it probably goes Pennsylvania's number one, Ohio's number two, Iowa's number three, followed by New Jersey, California, New York. All those schools are kind of, or states are right there together. But I think in a lot of the wrestling community agrees your typical top three goes PA, Ohio, Iowa. And that's just how it's kind of always been.
Why do you think PA is number one? Is it because, and I mean, Edinburgh is the famous
Ye-
college, right?
so they have a lot of good wrestling schools right now. Pennsylvania University is really tough. Edinburgh's tough. They've got a lot of good wrestling schools, and I think it's honestly just the culture that Pennsylvania wrestling has built. Um, Jody Stripmatter at Young Guns has just built Young Guns up to this unbelievable youth program and club that is like producing guys like Spencer Lee who are going out there winning 4 national titles on no ACL, and so I think it's just the areas of wrestling. Eastern Pennsylvania is just glory land for wrestling. The WPIAL, the Whippeal area, it's just wrestling galore. And then you look at Ohio, and Cleveland's the hotbed of wrestling for Ohio. Cleveland is just stacked from end to end with wrestling. You have so many schools: Elyria, Walsh Jesuit, Ignatius, St. Ed's. You have just everybody's there.
Let's talk about that too, since we talked about that a little bit off camera. But so I grew up there, and I went to Lakewood High School, and I had a lot of friends at both the places. But St. Ed's and St. Ignatius. So if you're a Catholic school, you can recruit, right? And
Yeah, so there's like there's I don't know if recruiting is the right word. I don't really know how all it goes about, but I know there's a little more communication between coaches and athletes at Catholic schools and private schools.
yeah,
I think the best thing they have to offer is the best education, right? So, a Catholic school versus a public school, you're going to get a better education. Private school versus a boarding school versus general education, you're going to get better education. And so I think that's kind of a target point. Hey, come here, we can give you the best education you've got. By the way, we have the best wrestling school in the country. I think that's a pretty easy pitch to sell to somebody. I'm a business guy here to you. I think, hey, if I can tell somebody they're going into the best education they can get, no, by the way, the sport that you think you're really good at, we're the best in the country at, come on over. I think that gets to be pretty easy. And on top of that, you get doctors and higher end people who are graduating from those Catholic schools with college degrees and things. And next, they've got a lot of money. And it's like, hey, give so-and-so a scholarship in my name. Give this person a scholarship. So now kids are getting scholarships to high schools. And then when you tell mom and dad on top of it being the best in the country, you're only paying $5,000 instead of $20,000 like everybody else. Makes it really easy to come.
Yeah, that's a good point. You put it in a good, eloquent way that it's about education, and recruiting might not, like you said, I don't want to piss anybody off, but I just know that I was at Lakewood High School, and for example, I played football. We would go undefeated every year, go to the state championship, play St. Ignatius, who at the time was ranked number one in the nation in football, and then we would lose 30 to nothing. Like we just get destroyed. It's very similar in wrestling, and for like most of the people that probably know Gary and I in the jiu-jitsu and MMA community, like somebody like Gray Maynor was at St. Ed's, and there's
Right.
more people than that. There's some guy named Nightheart, Eddie J. I mean, I just remember these guys were just unbelievable. And not only that, they would bring in a team like the national, I don't even know what they called, but they were from Japan, and they would beat these people from Japan. Like it was a different thing in all these schools. Like there was another, as far, I played football, so I have more, I remember them a little bit more, but there's another team called St. Joe's, and Desmond Howard, Super Bowl MVP, played for St. Joe's, and so did Elvis Gerbach, who played for San Francisco. That was their starting quarterback and wide receiver and everything. Like the level of talent that we had in Ohio, in my area, in Cleveland, it was unreal.
Yeah.
And looking back, I was just like, it's kind of hard to believe that all that went on, and you're in it. So you probably knew the wrestling more than me. I was naive, when after I left, I was like, oh shit, that was crazy.
Yeah, our assistant coach is from he went to St. Edward High School in Lakewood, Colin Heffernan. His dad's now the head coach there at St. Ed's. His dad was a national champion for Iowa. So you've got a high school coach who's a national champion in Division I wrestling.
Right.
They want to wrestle for you. Who wouldn't? I mean, the Heffernans are one of the most renowned wrestling families in Ohio. Their uncle just resigned from being the Illinois head coach for 20 plus years. I mean, at that point in time, it recruits itself when you're that good. And like Mechanicsburg did in the same way, like Caleb Romero and those guys were my incentive to go wrestle for them, like with them and train with them. I wanted to be with the best. When you're that good, it's hey, who doesn't want to be with the best guys? Do you want to and you're almost putting yourself behind the 8 ball in an area like Cleveland when you're not training with those guys or you're not with those guys.
Yeah. Which is interesting though, that I know we talked about obviously earlier, but you took the leap as a high school kid, and you're especially kind of going against your parents. I mean, that's kind of an adult move, to make that move, right? Like, I feel like that's something I would think of now because I'm more mature, and I'm like, hey man, like if I want to get better, if I want to do this, I'm going to go here. But I know when I was in high school, maybe I didn't mature as fast as you. I don't know, but I just know those thoughts would not enter my mind. I was looking for girls, number one, and then probably having a good time, number two. But obviously, I was not as talented as you, where I wasn't thinking about what college is going to recruit me. So maybe looking back, maybe that has a little bit more to deal with it because I didn't have to deal with those questions. I was just like, this is what I need to work with. But I'm amazed by that. That's impressive.
Yeah, it was definitely, it wasn't a fun thing to do. It wasn't an easy thing to do by any means. We still talk about it every now and again when it comes up in conversations about the family. And it was a family commitment, and in the end, we all knew what our end goals were. We all knew that there's things we've been working towards for a really long time, and at that time, that was the right step to go, and that was the right direction that I needed to be in for the time being, and so it worked.
I think we were talking about Pennsylvania, Ohio, Iowa always having the best. There is a Spartan-esque style of that too. Like, in order to be better than everybody else, you have to train better than everybody else. And then that's kind of instilled in you as you're growing up. It doesn't happen. You didn't happen to be a good wrestler just because of natural attributes. It happened because from a young age, and I know your dad worked with you, but from a young age, it was like, hey, it's time to work. We work. And even when we're not working, we're still doing stuff that's going to help us work. There is no off time. And like kind of like that Spartan training, like we're always training for battle.
Yeah.
And I think wrestling in general, just the sport of wrestling, the idea of embrace the grind and like we live here in pain and turmoil. That way it's easier later. Like that is what makes it better. And for whatever reason, I think the guys in Pennsylvania, Ohio, Iowa as well, I think there's a little more of that than other places.
Yeah, no, I agree. My dad did an amazing job. Unfortunately, wrestling in Southeastern Ohio is really not the best area for wrestling, unfortunately. And my dad knew that. And he put us in the best situation possible at any given time. And he had a lot of great connections. His college wrestling coaches from Cleveland, they coached one of the best club teams in the country at one time. One of his college coaches coached a kid throughout his whole entire life that ended up becoming a 3-time national champion or a 2-time national champion in Dean Hiles. So he put me with those guys. He put me in clubs. There was a club we went to in up in Toledo, Ohio, and Delta with Ohio Grapplers. And we were going places all the time to wrestle and compete and train. And we were finding guys wherever it could be. At one point in time, we were training with Sergey Belalazgov, who was a Olympic coach for Belarus. And we were just training with whoever we could at any given time, whoever was going to put us in that best situation. And my dad really took pride in that and being able to help us. He was very selfless in the sense of he was never afraid to put his own ego aside and say, hey, you need to go elsewhere right now. You need to get help here or wherever else. He knew, he was a brilliant guy and a great guy in the wrestling community, but he knew he wasn't the smartest person in the world. So he wasn't afraid to get us extra help. And that's really beneficial to us in the long run.
Well, it's obviously paid off. And, you still have a lot of wrestling to do still in college. But I know that you also have a new internship that you're getting ready to go into with the Open Mat. You want to talk a little bit about the Open Mat and what exactly it is you'll be doing with them?
Yeah, so the Open Mat is like it's a wrestling site where we are now presenting. They have before wrestling national rankings for high school all across the country. They're just a wrestling coverage company. They cover wrestling. They have some writers, and so they were looking for interns. Willie Saylor just bought Intermat, which is another big wrestling company, and so that kind of opened up some things through the Open Mat. And I took on a position as their internship there. I have to get one for school anyways. And then I was sitting in my apartment probably 3 weeks ago now, not even, and knew I had to get an internship before I graduated college, but just wasn't ready to give up wrestling for an internship yet. And kind of got an email, and this one came across, and Chris Miller with the Open Mat messaged me and basically was like, hey, I'm an alumni of OU. You're a wrestler there. Would you be interested in an internship? And I said, absolutely. We got to talking, and we figured out it was best that I took on the high school national rankings for them. So over the past 3 weeks, I've been building up my own national rankings for high school wrestlers across the United States. I've got 12 ranks at each weight class, 12 deep. And so that's been an interesting new journey. It's something that everybody's got, and that's a big thing in wrestling now is everybody wants to see what you're ranked. What are you ranked by this site? And they hadn't had somebody doing their rankings for a little bit now, and they needed to get that back up and going. And so I was the best fit at the time for that. And so I've spent the past 3 weeks building high school national rankings. And then I'll be doing some coverage for them as well.
In doing that, are you in contact with coaches and stuff of the different areas across the nation, or how is it that you're coming about that ranking system of yours?
I've had a pretty good knowledge of wrestling and always like to watch wrestling. I'm just like a wrestling junkie. Like I'll still watch the best high school tournaments in the country. So I don't pay attention to maybe as like some of the local stuff as much as I used to, but I'm always watching the best events and things. And so it was kind of like my knowledge was still pretty fresh on a lot of the guys. And basically me and Chris just came together and I was like, hey, I want to do it. So I haven't been in contact with many coaches yet. This is my first set of rankings I've done. I'm going to drop my email along with the rankings. So that way, if there's any questions, comments, hey, this guy's going this weight class instead of that weight class. If people feel the need to say, hey, so-and-so beat so-and-so, you might want to look at that. So I'll have my email along with that so I can start to get in contact with those people, because the best rankers in the country and things, they are in contact with the coaches a little more closely than I am. So I'm going to drop my email at that time too, to try to get in contact with those people that I need to be in contact with and better my rankings and better my knowledge of wrestling, honestly.
Is on the mat or the Open Mat, are they going to have do they have any thoughts about like having competitions or showing stuff on their website? It kind of like Flow Grappling would, or something like that.
Yeah. I'm not sure that there's any talk about like a streaming platform yet from them. Not sure. I haven't really started. I probably fully start with them this upcoming week. We just got in touch a while ago and they knew the rankings was something that needed done and they needed me for. So I'm starting to kind of dig deeper into the company. I do know there's talks about a podcast coming soon. I've offered, I think like technique of the week would be a great little segment for me to take on, especially still being active in college wrestling. So there's some talks about some things coming. Yeah.
Okay. Outside of wrestling and outside of college, what are you thinking about after you graduate? Do you have any plans? Any competition that you want to seek out, or is there anything further than just collegiate wrestling that you're thinking about?
Yeah, it's honestly still a big question to me as well. I know the one thing I love is sports. So I have gotten my bachelor degree. I'm in my undergraduate right now for sport management. I've got 1 year left in that, and I'm going to graduate hopefully next year of May of 2022 with a bachelor in sport management. Ohio University actually has the #1 program in the world for sports administration, business, or master's in sports administration. And they have a dual program that's master's in sports administration and master's in business administration. I still have 3 years of eligibility left. So I think that's a master's degree program that I want to pursue. Wrestling is something I love. If I'm able to keep progressing and I haven't reached my peak at that time, and I feel like I have a lot more to give and I have an opportunity to still compete at a very high level and do well, absolutely, I would love to wrestle. So, just kind of finishing some degrees up and getting a master's degree right now is the main thing while still finishing college wrestling up. If I get the chance to wrestle after college someday, I would love it. I do know working in sports would be a lot of fun along with coaching wrestling still. I would like to be like maybe a grad assistant or an assistant coach at a university right away and see where that kind of stuff takes me. So I'm pretty open to a lot of things, honestly, right now.
It seemed like where mainly after you're done wrestling with college, like it seems to me, and you know better than I do, that the only tournaments really available if you want to do stuff is maybe some kind of open thing, right? Is that correct?
Yeah, so it becomes like a senior level stage of wrestling. At that point in time after college, if you progress, you're going to be wrestling with guys like your top Olympians or world team members. At that point in time, you're really competing to make Olympic teams and world teams. And so that's kind of the stuff you're doing at that point in time, is just trying to put yourself on that next level to start making world teams, Olympic teams, to get paid. Because honestly, there's not a level in which you can get paid after college besides like making world teams and things.
Well, and that was going to be my next question. So what's your thoughts on maybe possibly doing some jiu-jitsu stuff or MMA stuff to maybe make some money? Like, for example, there was a big podcast that came out this week with Gordon Ryan where he's making a ton of money just doing basic no-gi jiu-jitsu right now. Would that be something that ever interested you? Maybe if you did some national stuff and just as another outlet, because it seems like that's the only outlet. You guys like Ben Askren and like Royce Alger, all, there's a ton of people that came kind of towards the jiu-jitsu MMA way. Is that something that you might do or ever crossed your mind?
Yeah, MMA, jiu-jitsu, that's all something that I think would be fun someday. MMA especially. I don't know how good I would be. I don't know if I could take a punch to the face or not. And so for me, that's the big unknown right now is, can I take a hit? I would love to get involved in MMA someday. I think that would be so much fun. But I've never really I've been in my fair share of scraps in the wrestling room, but outside, I don't know if I could get hit in the jaw and keep fighting. I don't know. I don't know if I could be choked out and try to fight a choke. I don't know what my limitations are there. So to me, that's a road I'm going to cross at that time, probably towards the end of my college wrestling career. But yeah, I would love to fight MMA. I mean, that's always been a dream of mine, but like I said, the unknown, I don't know.
For
I was going to say,
is that something you take as a senior then? Sorry to cut you guys off, but is that, you don't want to ruin your college career. So is that something you're going to stay away from until you graduate?
Yeah. So we actually have an OU alum right now, Taiwan Claxton, fights in Bellator professionally, and the dude's an absolute beast. And I would say if you know Taiwan, he probably had a deep intuition from a long time ago that he might be an MMA fighter. And
is that somebody you know, Gary, by the way, since you're smiling?
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. I've actually rolled with Taiwan. He's amazing, and his wrestling carries well into anything he wanted to do jiu-jitsu. When we rolled with him, he was the best guy on the mat, and he never done a day of jiu-jitsu, and it was obvious. So
Yeah, he's professionally fighting MMA right now for Bellator, which is probably the number 2 mixed martial arts company in the world right now. And he's doing great. And he didn't start until after college. He spent probably 3 years after college really just getting himself chest deep into jiu-jitsu, boxing, mixed martial arts together. And he spent a lot of time after college doing all that stuff. So that's a road I would have to cross at that point in time. But it's something it does interest me, but I just don't know where like that stuff translate, obviously I think, hey, I can probably get into the cage and wrestle with a lot of people, right?
Absolutely.
I think that translates pretty well, but never been hit before. And I think, and this is a personal opinion, but I think a lot of the guys that are best in the MMA and UFC and things like that are guys that are fighting for their lives and guys that are really fighting for survival, guys that really don't have anything to lean back on. They don't have any kind of degree or they don't have the best life outside of whatever they might be doing, but they're fighting for their absolute lives. At one point in time, a lot of people don't know Conor McGregor was fighting for his life. That's really what made him as successful as he was. He had no choice but to knock dudes out to live. He couldn't go work a business job. He couldn't go be an athletic director. He had nothing. He was broke, living in an apartment with his wife and had nothing, and he had to fight for his life. And I think that benefited him a lot.
It does. And as a fighter, as a trainer of fighters, not so much now, but definitely before, that's what you need. That gives you the edge, right? Because for guys that have cushy lives, like including myself now, I'm an older guy with a family. It's easier for me now. Like, let's say that I was getting my ass kicked. Well, I'll just say what it was like for me. The same thing. Like when I grew up, when I was 18 years old, and I was fighting, I was doing boxing, kickboxing, MMA. I 100% would have died in the ring, 100%. And actually, that's how I looked at a fight, which is a little extreme because I looked at it when I went into a fight, even if it's just boxing, that I could die. And quite honestly, people die every year in boxing, right? Just could get hit in the head and you may get, brain bleed or whatever. And it's a little extreme because mostly you don't, but that's how I looked at it. And I am knowing that was my life. I said, I don't care. And in fact, my first boxing match, at the beginning of the second round, I tore my rotator cuff, so I couldn't even use my left arm. And I went to the corner, and I told my coach, I said, "Hey, I didn't know what happened. I just knew my left arm wouldn't work." And I said, "I think I broke my left arm." And he said, "Are you going to quit?" And I said, "No." And he said, "Well, shut the fuck up." And that was okay because that meant, well, you're going to go out there. There's no giving up, right? Like MMA, it's a little different, right? Sometimes you tap and like, hey, I can't use my arm. I'll just give up. I'll go tomorrow. In boxing, there's the famous Roberto Duran fight where he said no more, right? It basically said I tap, and then he was written off as a boxer. It's a famous fight because he gave up. He's a loser. So in essence, you're supposed to die on your shield in boxing. When you have a good life and you have things, you have a family, you have a job, it's really hard to do that. Like, and that's actually why I stopped competing and stopped fighting. Not the only reason, but one of the main reasons was because now, like maybe somebody's beating me up. I have the choice of saying, okay, I'm not going to quit. I'm going to go out there and die, or I'm going to die trying. And now I'm like, man, I just really like to go home and kiss my wife and hug my kids.
Yeah.
there's a different thing. So there is something to that, right? Like, or like a Conor McGregor, like you're saying, he's like, hey man, I think I'm just going to go on my yacht and count my money. I'm saying,
Yeah.
like,
yeah, and that's the thing, a lot of people don't understand. At one point in time, Conor McGregor was fighting to live. He had no savings, no money, no nothing. His wife worked from home, or they were as low as they could be at one point in time, and the dude knew he had to fight for his life. At that point in time, he was fighting for himself, his wife that looked at him and promised him that she would be there through the richest and the poorest of times, and she was there for both. And now they both live happily together in Dublin, Ireland, on big yachts and private jets. But for that guy at one point in time, he was fighting for his life. Now a lot of people want to know, like, why doesn't Conor McGregor want to fight all the time? Why doesn't he want to do? The dude's got he's got kids now. He's got a wife. He's got everything he wants. What does he have to go out there and do? I mean, at this point in time, he's not fighting for his life anymore. And I think that takes a different kind of killer edge from somebody when they go from fighting for their lives and survival to, all right, I don't have to do this anymore, but I can. That's a different type of instinct that you just don't get every day.
It is absolutely, but I know these guys aren't fighting, but you have a LeBron and a Michael Jordan, and those guys are killer competitors, especially Michael Jordan more so than LeBron. But he just loved to compete. And why I bring that up is I've had friends that were fighters that just loved to compete. They'd compete 2-3 times in a weekend. They would lie. For example, there's a guy named Dan Swift that I know that he would compete 2-3 times in a weekend, and he would give a fake name. He'd go to different states, and he would box. He'd do MMA all on a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, because he loved to compete. Right? Whether he was willing to die or not to die, rather getting out of that, he just loved to compete. You may be that guy that you love to compete so much. I think a wrestler would have more of that instinct than maybe just a regular guy.
And no, and I totally agree. And that's kind of what I'm waiting to see, where that little bit of edge, there's the quote that every athlete dies two lives. He dies twice. He dies when his career is over, and he dies when he dies. And so that competitor instinct in me, it's alive and well right now as much as ever. And if it's there when I'm done wrestling, I think MMA would absolutely be the next step I take. I think at that point in time, if wrestling's kind of done and I still have that killer edge, it was like, man, I'm hungry to compete all the time. I think MMA is a step I would take to kind of start rolling around and maybe just experiment with it and see where it's at, because like you said, that edge to compete sometimes just doesn't go away very quickly. And for myself, I'm a competitor. I love competing. I mean, that's all I've ever done. So if that's still there, that's something I would like to see myself go that route, honestly. And
have you had that edge to compete since you're a little kid?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. I mean, and that might be one of the reasons a lot of jiu-jitsu guys, I know, I don't want to speak for everybody, but I look up to you guys, man. There's a level of discipline that a wrestler has that no other sport has. And just so you know, as a personal level, every time I talk to a wrestler, I didn't realize this in high school. And I think because we're all brainwashed, like we more thought a black belt in karate was the baddest man alive. And we thought all the wrestlers were like little gay guys in tights, to be honest. I mean, just in the 90s, it's a joke now, but I'm saying now I realize the error in my mistake that you guys were the most disciplined, badass people. And then if I could have a kid, my kids don't wrestle, and I wish they did. I have 3 of them, because it's going to last you for the rest of your life, whether that's waking up every day and doing the grind of going to work, just working out to be healthy for your family, whatever it is. You have what a lot of people will just never have, because you know what it's like to cut weight as a young kid. Man, that's a lot of amazing things. A lot of people can argue those things are bad for you, like cutting weight in high school and stuff, but I would also argue that those things are going to make you an amazing business person when you have a job, an amazing husband, an amazing family man, because you just got the discipline and the grind that nobody else has.
Yeah. I think the discipline's probably the biggest thing. Is, I mean, my dad didn't really have me cut a lot of weight when I was young and before middle school, high school, but it was like, hey, maybe you can't eat this tonight before weigh-ins in the morning. You're right on weight now. You weigh 75 pounds, but you've weighed that all week long. Let's just not eat this tonight, and we'll weigh in the morning. We'll so like, even at a young age, it was just taught like, hey, if you can wait for this, you'll get this in return. And
Awesome.
I think it was just and him always being in the high school coach, I always wanted his attention. I wanted to be in the high school room with him. And I think the competitive edge just started when I was young. I mean, I can even remember, being in trouble, like getting in trouble at school because we were doing, flashcard math games, and you had to race to get the flashcard right. And I was like, I took pride in being the best guy in the flashcards in math class. Like, I would race to try to do my homework quicker than other kids could do. I would race to get to lunch first. Like, I just didn't like to lose. Like, if I could be first at something and everybody knew that I was the first one and they were behind me somewhere, like, that alone just ate me up, and like became really what I wanted to do, was succeed and compete and try to win at anything and everything I could do. And it's still that way, honestly. I mean, playing Monopoly here at my apartment with my brother, my girlfriend, my friends, or whatever. We played over a few weeks ago, and I think my brother ended up having the board thrown up in the air before the game was over. I mean, money flew everywhere. He broke the board. It's it's competition. We don't want to lose no matter what it is.
I think that's what's missing. And most people argue that from our generation, definitely Gary and I's generation, we're a little bit older than you, but with the everybody gets a trophy thing now,
Yeah.
may die out eventually because they don't know what it's like to lose and then have the feeling of winning because everybody's a winner, right? So unless you have that feeling of both, like, hey, I don't like this feeling of losing, I want to win next time, or I love the feeling of winning, I want to keep it going. That's my fear. Look, I don't know. Time will tell what happens, but I'm not a big fan of everybody gets a trophy. I know that's kind of controversial, but what you have, look, it can everything go to the extreme, right? You can have somebody that's so extreme that they're hard to deal with because they want to win at everything, and everybody hates them. But arguably, I will tell you this: that people watched The Last Dance with Michael Jordan, and they have still talked to this day of how great that guy was, and they actually, and he was worried that documentary came out that people wouldn't like him as much because of what a hard
Yeah.
ass he was, right?
Yeah.
But really, I think a lot of us admire that.
Yeah, and that's like just, I mean, the dude competed in everything he did, and he gambled on golf, he gambled on this, and that gamble is just him showing his confidence in himself. Honestly, is all it is. And it's not that he wanted to win money so much so badly that he needed to gamble $1,000 on this hole, and none of that was ever really money related if you think about it. He just wanted to back himself up and say, hey, I'm $10,000 sure about myself that I'm not going to lose to you. I'll put $10,000 that I'm that good, that I'm not going to lose. And that was just confidence in himself and confidence in the competitor that he was, to say, hey, you're not better than me at this. You're not better than me at that. Like, it was just a competitor saying, here's my money. You don't believe me. Here it is. Take it from me and prove me wrong. And a lot of people tried and a lot of people failed. That's how it was.
Yeah, there's a story I think with Horace Grant, but it might have been like $1 or $5, but he made him go get the money. Where, like, he's like, I don't have money, I don't have pockets on my playing shorts, and he's like, well, go get the money. And the guy's like, is that $5 that expensive or that important to you? And he said, well, no, but you giving me that $5 and knowing that you lost is important to me.
Right. It's the exchange of you watching me give you that $5 and giving up that defeat of saying, hey, you just weren't as good today.
Yeah. Well, just so you know, I admire that, and I think Gary may be the same, but I know that people like you, and quite honestly, because the older I've got, I've lost that competitive edge. So I still I look for guys that I admire that have that edge like you do, and that had the grind. Because I also didn't have, I wrestled in middle school, but I didn't go on with it. So I didn't. Quite honestly, I didn't have like the weight cutting. I didn't have to wake up and do this and battle through this. So,
yeah, it was
a lot of admiration towards you and your friends.
Competition alone just was always never ending. Like, I mean, it honestly, and it's a trade-off. Like, I would genuinely say I gave up a lot of maybe friendships or friends, and like sometimes we were at odds ends with each other because I just couldn't give up the little things. I couldn't stop competing at the little things. I mean, whether it was in gym class or whatever, sometimes I wasn't always the most liked because I just couldn't give up the fact of mediocrity. I couldn't be mediocre today. I didn't want to be tied with you. I didn't want to be the same as you. And it's still that way today. I don't want to be the same as you. I don't want to tie with you. I don't care what you have. I mean, good for you, but I just want to be better. And I think that's what really feeds me and fuels my fire, honestly.
Well, you'll be successful outside of wrestling when you have a real job. And I will say this, as again, as an older guy that works, I have a job called medical device sales, but it's a job that's high demanding, that makes a good bit of money, and it's a good job. But I would say that who they hire the most is people like yourself, and the reason is because they know those people have the drive, because that's who's going to get up every day. Because, for example, my job, I'm medical device sales. I don't have a hands-on boss. Like ours is all incentive. The more we sell, the better we do, the more money that we make. So that takes a lot of self-discipline, a lot of self-motivation, and a guy that comes up. So a lot of times when they're interviewing, they'll have, because I've been part of the interview process, they'll have wrestlers, football players, basketball players, all these in college, and that's who they'll hire more than somebody that actually on paper has more. And I've asked them before, I'm like, man, this guy's got an MBA, he's rocking it. I'm like, why are you hiring this guy? And they're like, well, that guy was a successful D1 football player, basketball player, whatever, and that means that he knew what it was like to be dedicated and to give up his life, just like you said, and to make the sacrifices to make himself better. And that's what our job is. And that kind of woke me up, and I was like, well, damn, that's true. And it's like on paper, you know, like I said, a lot of people have these degrees and stuff that mean nothing. That meant they were pretty good at school. And there is a lot involved into that, right?
Yeah.
It's not knocking that, but there also is a lot to, like, man, since you're a little kid, you're cutting weight, you're grinding, you're going one-on-one with some guy that's trying to kill you. And it's like, you're putting it all on the line, and right.
Yeah.
It's just you and that guy, right?
There's a lot of selfless ego on the mat. Like, you've got to put your ego aside every time you step on the mat. And I think college is a lot more different than high school in that sense of, hey, you're wrestling somebody that's really good every time. Like, if you have your ego just sitting there and you're afraid to have your ego hurt, a lot of times it's hard to compete, because when you're worried about upsetting your ego or letting that interfere, you're not going to go out and compete as fearlessly or as often or as competent as you really are. I mean, that's a big thing. It really is.
What keeps you from worrying about losing?
I don't know that there's a lot that does. You can ask Coach Greenlee, but he says that I'm the most competitive kid he's coached. He said, you know, and it goes, and it's my best friend, but my worst enemy at times. Sometimes it really hinders me from growing in practice at times, because I'm too stubborn to let somebody take me down. So I might be tired, and I might be too stubborn to take a risk that I need to take more often to try to score. But because I'm tired and I know it might not happen, I'm too stubborn to just let somebody get a takedown on me. And so sometimes that's my biggest hinder. And that's what we're really working on right now is becoming less caring and wrestle just more carefree, be excited, and just be glad to wrestle. And that's kind of something I'm really working on right now is finding that just gratefulness to wrestle and compete, and just whatever happens. If you beat me today, you're probably better than me today, because I promise you I'm going to be the best I can be every time I compete. And that's really where I'm trying. That, you know, I had a kind of a disappointing past season, and just, you know, some things compiled up and it hit me and I wasn't ready for it. But, you know, I think the biggest thing I'm at with after that season and everything is just like, hey, whatever happens. You've got to be grateful that you're still competing, be really excited to go out and compete. And if you enjoy what you're doing a lot of times some of these other guys don't enjoy it. Cutting weight's not fun. Training 10 months out of the year is not fun. But if you can make it fun and you can convince yourself that what you're doing is fun and you love it and you don't care what happens, man, it's really easy to wrestle really, really loosely and fun and just enjoy what you're doing. And I'm oftentimes a lot better when I do that. And, you know, I think I was there my freshman year more than now.
Do you have tips to do that? Because that might be useful. Gary and I, like, it's a grind of Gary and I have to, you know, he owns a gym, I own a gym, and, you know, look, we love it. Going to the gym every single day is great, but also Gary and I, we're the instructors. We have a target on our back, right? So sometimes it's annoying. Like, sometimes I don't feel like going to the gym. I'm tired, but you know, and that's the day that maybe somebody comes in off the street that's not from my gym that wants to kick my ass, and they're like, "Hey, I'm from South Carolina. I'd like to roll with you." I'm like, "God damn!"
Yeah,
like,
but
not today, right? But
how do you get in the way? You know, your ego's at that point in time, you're the competitive edge and you takes over and says, all right, there's, you know, Joey from South Carolina is not walking into my gym to beat me today. That's not happening. And
so
I think for me,
make it fun. You just still make it competitive. Is there something that you do that makes you say, okay, like, I'm just happy to be alive today. Like, I'm ready to go to the gym. Right.
Yeah. I think sometimes when I'm cutting weight the most is when it comes to me, I just kind of look around at things and I think about situations I've been in. I think about places I've been in, and the heartbreak's probably what's made me the best throughout some of these times. I think back to certain, man, I hurt really bad at that time. I didn't place the MAC, you know, I got 7th at the MAC tournament this year. I really hurt badly. I don't want to be in that place again. What do I have to do to make sure I'm never in that place of hurt again? You know, my freshman year, I lost the MAC finals. I was in a place of deep hurt. My junior year in high school, I lost in the state finals. I was in a place of deep hurt. What do I have to do not to be back in that place of hurt? You know, I'm thankful I'm not hurting like that today. I'm thankful that I can go in here and better myself. I have a scholarship and I get to do something that you can't do or you can't do. Or I have a very specific individual relationship with wrestling that not everybody gets to have. And to me, that's just really like exciting. And knowing that I get to do something that only 1% of wrestlers ever get to do, be glad I get to do it and give myself the best opportunity. I only have, 3 more years at this, 4 more years at this, 5 more years, whatever it is. Just be the best I can be, and don't let little things hinder who Colt Yinger is, and don't let these minor setbacks really hinder you from where you've been. Take where you've been and let it help you get to where you want to go, because I think my biggest setbacks have been some of my biggest helps, honestly.
I think that's kind of universal. It doesn't matter, not necessarily wrestling, but people finding that thing that they love, that thing that they're good at, and trying to excel at it and be the best that they can at it. And I think a lot of people would be a lot happier if they could find that thing that is hard to do and push through and get as good as you can at it. And I don't care if it's wrestling, jiu-jitsu, basketball, any kind of athletic, if it is some sort of, if it's math, but I think a lot of times people are okay with getting okay at things.
Yeah.
Instead of mastering things.
Yeah.
And I think that's a problem that we have in society in general, is like people don't want to master anything. They just want to be good enough.
Mediocrity is it's a word that I like to use, because I think you hear mediocrity, you're okay. Well, am I good, or you're okay? You're mediocre, and I think in our society today, mediocrity is becoming more and more popular. Hey, you can be good at it or you can be okay, but if you're okay, you're still going to pass along. Okay, I'll be okay, and you'll just pass along, and then you're okay at the next stage and you pass along. If you're not excelling and you don't want to be great at every stage of life that you're at, right now for me, I'm at a stage of life where if I don't want to be great here and I'm okay and I'm satisfied with being okay, when I get a job someday, I'll be okay with being okay for my employer. I'll be okay with being the next guy up when I'm an employee. I won't be ready to be the manager, the boss. Like, if you're okay with just being average and being okay, then hey, good for you. But to me, that's not what I want to do, because if I'm okay at this stage of life, I'll be okay at the next stage of life. If I'm not great right now and today, I'm not going to be great tomorrow, and I'm not going to be great later on in life. And that's like, I think some of the biggest differences in personality and perspective of how are you going to succeed. I mean, you have to be great at every stage of life, or, and when I say great, that's a different term for everybody. For Gary, it might be being the best in the gym or the best in the state or the best in the country. But for Butch, it might be being the best in the town or best at the school, and so it's different for everybody. But find what you are trying to achieve and be great at, and be great at that. Everybody's got something they can be great at. Find what you want to do to be great at and be great at it, because there's got to be the best bagger at the grocery store. Somebody's the best bagger. Quick story, me and my buddy Mario Guillen, we worked at Amazon last year at a warehouse in Etna, Ohio, up in Columbus. We drove an hour to Amazon to be packagers for Amazon during the pandemic. We took pride in hearing our name. They would announce the top 10 fastest packers names every hour. So they would take your speed and how many packages you packed over the hour, and they would announce your name at the end of that hour. Me and Mario took it upon ourselves and thought, man, I want there was 2,000 employees at any given time working on that floor. I want all 2,000 people to hear Colt Yinger. And so I took it upon myself. In a matter of 2 weeks, I was one of the top 10 packers on the floor. And every hour I got to hear Colt Yinger. And it bugged the living snot out of me that I wasn't the best packer. I got to the point where I would ask my boss, hey, will you place me right beside so-and-so today, so that way I could see how he's doing it, so I could take tips from him? By the time I was done, I think me and Mario both were like top 5 packers for Amazon. I mean, the numbers we were getting, they said they hadn't seen people there with 3 years getting. And we just, that competition part of things just took off for us.
Well, it sounds like you got a little Michael Jordan in you. That's good.
I hope.
Yeah,
one last thing, and I think I would be unjust if I didn't mention it. So my son wrestles over at Nelsonville, and I was assistant coach the last couple of years and helped out. But we was lucky enough to go before COVID hit. We were lucky enough to go to see the OU team wrestle, and I think that there was a team from New York, some sort of Buffalo school or whatever.
Buffalo.
You were injured at the time, and you were there.
Yeah.
And we got to sit next to your mom. And Carter's like, hey, I want to go sit next to Miss Yinger. And I was like, all right. So we sat over there. Colt, you talk a lot.
Yeah.
You talk a lot. You talk a lot from the stands.
Yeah. I believe in my guys a lot.
And you also like to point out that the other guys aren't doing so great.
Yeah. I think that
You
was
trash talker?
probably Coach Greenlee enjoys listening to the boys get a little bit rowdy every now and again. Being hurt, I think the only thing I could do was create some commotion, and rather it was chirping a referee or hollering at another athlete, not always the most proud about it. But, I really feel like even off the mat, I was a starter as a freshman for that team. I still look at that team as I'm part of that team, and those guys still need me. Rather, I can't do much for them today or tomorrow, but at that moment I could provide a voice for them. And that was an interesting heated duel. We had some pillows out. I think we were hollering a little bit, but yeah, I'm not afraid to be vocal about things because I really believe in what I'm doing, what my teammates are doing. And so like when I get to watch those guys work and train and I know how good they are, I'm not really too scared to kind of hide about us beating another opponent, or maybe we get beat or I'm not happy about something. But I believe in my guys, and I see, 25 to 30 other guys from my left to right and know that these guys have my back. I've got their back, and I wasn't afraid to really speak my opinion on some of that stuff, honestly.
Don't get me wrong. I loved every second of it. I loved every second of it. And I also, but that's not really my style. I'm kind of quiet, go out there, do it and get it done.
My dad's the same way.
And there's nothing wrong with that. Everybody's got their own style. It was just amusing to me because I like the whole time he's like, he's wearing the heels out of his shoes, ref. He's wearing oh, you better not throw that brick out there right now. You don't want to review this one. That's not going to be a good review. The whole match. And it was like an hour and a half long, 2 hours long.
That stuff gets taxing on athletes, coaches. I think the one year there was a kid that same year that I was hurt, kid that beat me during the regular season my freshman year, but it placed like 7th at the MAC tournament the year I got 2nd. We were kind of chirping him, and he looked up in the stands, and one of my buddies pulled up the picture of us on the podium at the MAC tournament. He goes, "Yinger can't see where you're at. He doesn't see you down at 7th place. He's up on second." And I was standing on second or whatever. But, a lot of that comes with a lot of preparation, a lot of belief and confidence in the guys around you and the people that you're with and trust, honestly.
Hey, man, that's all. So I don't know if you want to wrap it up here, Gary, but going back to you ranking people, what can anybody do anything to get you on the radar, or does that make sense? Like,
yeah, absolutely. So I watch a lot of the biggest events. I just watched, sorry about that. I just watched some of the biggest high school events in the country a few weeks ago. I watched the World Team Trials, NHSDAs that I had competed in. So I watch a lot of that stuff and see where guys finish. I watch a lot of film over. I kind of look at the state tournaments and all that stuff. But I'm going to drop my email when I'm going to talk to my boss. We're going to drop my email out. I'm going to have a specific email just for the rankings that coaches, athletes, anybody can kind of just drop some comments, email me, hit me up. I'm more than welcome and open to watching some film on guys, seeing how they've placed at other events and see where they've fared with other people and getting to know coaches. And if there's weight class changes, hey, I'm going to go this weight this upcoming year, not the weight you have me ranked at, all that kind of stuff. I'm going to be open to. I'm going to have an email set up for all that.
So let me finish with this, Gary, then. How can they reach you on that, number one, meaning your email, or do you have a special email or things designed for that?
I think I'm going to go ahead and use Coltster28. Let me look real quick. I've got it right here. Right in my Gmail. I haven't decided officially yet, but I think I'm going to use this Gmail here. I've got set up and don't use for much anymore. It's going to be Coltster, COLTSTER 28 at gmail.com is what I plan on using. And so just any information on any of that kind of stuff, send me emails. If you've got a question of why whoever's ranked over who, questions are more than welcome as well.
Should they invite you to tournaments or events, or what do you think?
Yeah, if you've got an event and you think, hey, we've got some really good talent here, if it's being live streamed somewhere, I would be more than excited to join in on a live stream or something and watch what we got going on. Currently with me wrestling here at OU, I'm not sure how much traveling I'll do. We start our summer training session tomorrow, actually, so I don't know how much I'll be doing travel-wise, but yeah, I'll be open to a lot of different things.
That's a good point too. With COVID, I know arguably COVID's coming to an end, but it may not be too either. But maybe they should send you some videos and stuff right now. You're going to be wrestling. You're going to be busy.
Yeah, flow wrestling is a really big help with this kind of stuff too, because almost all of the best events in the country are streamed on Flow Wrestling. So I mean, I've probably spent 30 hours, maybe even 40 hours in the past few weeks. I would say I've probably spent about 50 hours in the past 2.5 weeks of just like watching wrestling film, searching this guy's name. Where did he place this tournament? Where did he place that tournament? Oh, he wrestled so-and-so. So-and-so was ranked at this weight, and just a lot of comparisons and watching guys wrestle. And there might be a guy that a lot of rankers don't watch and go, or, they don't have ranked very highly, but I look and go, I think this guy's pretty good. I mean, and I might have him ranked a little bit higher. So just trying to figure out, it's kind of like apples to apples and just figuring out where you think people fit in. It's been a big change for me, honestly, too, because I've been in the rankings before, and I've been in rankings in high school and now in college and things, but I've never done them. So it's like, now I'm like looking at the grand scheme of things and realizing how much work it really could take.
No, it's impressive. It's a tough job. I don't envy you, because to bring the talk back to a little bit of what Gary and I do, right? It's like A beat B, B beat C. Doesn't mean that A is going to beat C, because it doesn't
Right.
work that way, right? And we see that time and time in MMA. It's like,
Yep.
just because so and so beat so and so doesn't mean the other person is going to beat so and so. So
Absolutely.
tough job for you, man.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. I'm really excited to just kind of see where it takes off from. I'm a little bit nervous. I mean, I'm probably the first college wrestler that's published a national ranking like this for a big national wrestling forum. It's probably a first for that. So, hey, the feedback and all that kind of stuff will be welcomed. I'm a little bit nervous to see where it goes, but I have belief in myself, and I've got pretty broad shoulders if I can take a punch here and there. So
yeah.
It goes bad, but at least we're going down swinging.
I think we all have confidence that you'll be fine in it. I think not only yourself is confident. I'm sure Open Mat is confident in you, and they've seen something they like. We obviously see something we like in you, so I think you'll be fine.
I appreciate it.
Well, you two Bobcat MMA /wrestling /jiu-jitsu guys have been a lot to deal with tonight. So you guys go ahead and take us home, man.
Again, thank you, Colt, for coming on and spending a little bit of time with us. And obviously, it's Mother's Day, so we have to say Happy Mother's Day to all the moms out there. So,
yeah, Mom and Happy Mother's Day.
Yeah. Anybody who's listening, guys, you can also find us on Spotify. It's the Rest Round on Spotify. We also have the Rest Round page where all these will be uploaded too. Thanks again. Have a good night, guys. Take it easy.
Thank you guys so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, take care.